It was the kind of winter you do not forget, the kind that settles over a village and makes it look as if God himself had shaken out a great white blanket from the sky. Snow lay thick on the roofs and fences, and every tree branch wore its own soft cap of white. The little Moldavian village curled in the valley as if it were sleeping, smoke rising lazily from chimneys into the pale morning air. On the main road, which everyone simply called the lane, the snow had been beaten down by boots and sleigh runners. The lane wound its way past low houses with small windows and wooden gates, then climbed slowly toward the hill where the church watched over them all, straight and white against the blue of the sky. Inside one of those low houses, a boy named Eli was already awake, though the sun had barely opened its eyes. He lay under a thick woolen blanket, staring at the ceiling blackened by many winters of smoke, listening. The house was still half in darkness, but the sounds of Christmas Eve were already beginning. From the room beyond the curtain, he heard his mother moving quietly, like a cat who knows every creak in the floor. Somewhere above, in the attic, the wind sighed through the old boards. The stove still whispered with last night's fire. Eli whispered into the dark. Today is the day. The day before Christmas had its own breath, its own rhythm. It smelled of wood smoke and sweet dough and fresh snow, and it sounded like bells far away and children's laughter not yet born. He pushed aside the blanket and jumped down from the tall wooden bed, landing on the woven rug his mother had made long ago. The air was cold enough to bite, but Eli did not mind. He pulled on his thick woolen socks, then his patched trousers and his sheepskin vest that had belonged to his older brother before him. When he pushed aside the curtain and stepped into the main room, the warmth kissed his cheeks. The clay stove, big and white and cracked here and there with age, glowed softly. On top of it, where in summer the kittens slept, now lay a tray where dough was rising under a white cloth. His mother stood at the table, kneading another heap of dough with strong, floury hands. Her sleeves were rolled up, and a few strands of hair had escaped from her scarf and stuck to her forehead. She glanced at him with a smile that was as much scolding as it was tender. "Well, well, look who woke up with the roosters," said Mother. "How could I sleep, Mother? Today we make traditional walnut sweetbread. Tonight we go caroling. How can a man sleep when the whole village is getting ready for Christmas? A man, is it?" Mother laughed, her hands sinking again into the dough. "At most, a rooster with frozen toes. Come, wash your face before the water in the basin turns to ice. Then we will see what work there is for such a great man." Eli ran to the corner, splashed his face with the water that indeed felt close to freezing, and inhaled sharply as the cold bit into his skin. When he dried his face with the rough towel, his cheeks were already glowing. On the wooden bench by the wall, his younger sister Anna sat wrapped in a woolen shawl, blinking sleep from her eyes. Her hair, in two dark braids, looked almost black against the whiteness of the room. "Did you see, Ilie?" she asked softly. "It snowed again in the night." "Of course it did," said Ilie. "Snow knows when Christmas is coming. It would be ashamed not to show up." Mother shook her head, though her lips curled with amusement. "Snow or no snow, there is much to do. Eli, you will go with your father to bring more wood from the shed. The stove must not be caught empty on Christmas. Anna, you help me with the nuts. We still have to grind them for the traditional walnut sweetbread." As if summoned by his name, Father stepped in from the porch, bringing with him a gust of icy air and a spray of snowflakes. He stamped his boots on the threshold and brushed the white from his worn sheepskin coat. "Good morning, you lazy bones," he said, though his eyes were as kind as the fire in the stove. "The world is already shining outside. The sun has put on its best shirt and you are only now stirring." "I have been awake for hours," protested Eli. "He has," said Anna loyally. "He woke me up too." "Then it is settled," Father replied. "The two of you will not be afraid of work today. Eli, put on your boots. The wood will not fly into the house by itself." They stepped out into the yard, where the snow squeaked under their feet. The sky was a pale, clear blue, and a thin mist rose from the nearby fields, catching the light like a veil. The village dogs barked here and there, their voices sharp in the cold morning air. The shed was tucked behind the house, its roof heavy with snow. Father pulled open the door, and the smell of dry wood rushed out, warm and comforting. Together they stacked armfuls of logs and carried them back to the house, their breaths puffing out in little clouds. On the lane beyond the fence, a few villagers were already passing by. Old Man Toda went by with his sled, pulled by his horse, a dark shape against the snow. The sledboards screeched softly as they slid over the packed road. Father lifted a hand in greeting. "Good morning, Toda. Ready for Christmas?" "As ready as a poor man can be," answered Toda, his voice rough but steady. "At least winter came with snow, not with mud. That already is a gift." Eli watched the sled disappear around the bend. The village seemed both quieter and more alive on days like this, as if everyone spoke more softly but felt more strongly. Back inside, the house was a different world. The stove crackled, the room smelled of yeast and vanilla, and Anna was already cracking walnuts with a small stone, placing the halves carefully in a bowl. On the table lay dough shaped into thick braids, waiting to become traditional walnut sweetbread. Mother sprinkled them with sugar and ground walnuts and folded them gently, like someone wrapping gifts for the soul rather than for the hands. "Remember," said Mother as she worked, "Christmas without traditional walnut sweetbread is like a winter without snow. The stomach may survive, but the heart feels robbed." "And Christmas without carols?" asked Anna. "That would be like a sky without stars," said Father, hanging his coat on a peg by the door. "The singing of children is the bell that tells heaven we have not forgotten joy." Eli's eyes sparkled. "We will sing loud tonight, Father. We will wake even the angels." "Sing loud if you must," said Father, "but sing true. Better a small voice with a clean heart than a shout with empty words." The day unfolded like a long, bright ribbon. Women swept their yards, shaking snow from rugs and scarves. Men carried wood, fixed fences and looked to the animals. Chickens clucked in their coops, cows snorted softly in their stalls, and the pigs in the sty seemed to dream of the cracked corn scattered before them. From time to time, someone would knock at the gate. A neighbour came to borrow a handful of flour, another to return a pot, yet another just to share a word and a smile. "Are you done with the traditional walnut sweetbread, Mariawara?" called a woman over the fence. "Almost," answered Mother. "They are rising now. If they turn out well, I will send one to you." "If they turn out well," said Father quietly to Eli, "your mother will say they could have been better. That is how you know they are perfect." Around noon, the church bell rang slowly, sending its deep sound rolling over the village and the surrounding fields. Eli stopped for a moment in the yard and listened. The bell had a way of gathering all the loose thoughts in his head and tying them together. He imagined the people in their houses pausing, just as he had, and saying a small prayer. Somewhere beyond the hills, beyond the forests, beyond even the sky, God was listening. Afternoon reached them on silent feet. The sun slid toward the edge of the world, and the shadows of the houses grew longer and bluer on the snow. In the house, the traditional walnut sweetbread loaves were already in the oven, and the smell was so rich that Ilie thought even a stone might start to feel hunger. Anna hovered near the stove like a little moth drawn to warmth. "Mother, are they ready?" "Not yet, little impatient one," said Mother. "When the smell fills the street, then you may ask again." Father sat at the table, carving a small wooden star with his knife. He smoothed the edges and poked a hole through the center. "What is that for?" asked Ilie. "For the tree," said Father simply. "Did you think only rich people hang stars in their houses? We have our own kind of stars made with our own hands." Later, when the sky had grown darker and the first real stars began to prick through the blue, Father and Ilie went out to the grove behind the fields. Snow lay piled on the low bushes and evergreen trees. Their breath clouded before them as they walked, and the air seemed to ring with the quiet of winter. They chose a small fir tree, straight and proud, with branches like open hands. Father cut it carefully, then lifted it onto his shoulder. "A tree is like a guest," said Father as they walked home. "You bring it into your house, you dress it with light and color, and for a few days you treat it better than yourself. Then you let it go. But the memory stays." "Do trees remember too?" asked Ilie. "Perhaps," answered Father. "Or perhaps God remembers for them all." By the time they reached the house, night had truly fallen. The village was now a handful of warm squares of light floating in a sea of blue shadow. Smoke rose straight into the still air. Somewhere a dog barked twice and then fell silent. Inside, Mother had placed a white cloth on the table and laid out bowls of nuts, apples, and dried plums. The traditional walnut sweetbread loaves, golden and proud, cooled on the stove. Anna stared at them as if they were treasure. "Mother, they are beautiful." "They are decent," said Mother, hiding a pleased smile. "If I had had better flour, they would have been even more beautiful." But God sees the effort, not the perfection. Together, the family set up the tree in the corner of the room. They had no glass balls or colored ribbons from the city, but they had walnuts wrapped in shiny paper, strings of dried apples, and the wooden star that Father had carved. Anna hung the star at the very top, standing on a chair while Father held her steady. "Higher, Father, higher. The star must see all of us." "If it sees your heart," said Father, "that is high enough." When they stepped back, the tree looked almost shy, as if it was not used to so much attention. The small ornaments caught the light of the oil lamp and reflected it in tiny, gentle sparks. Outside, the first group of carolers had already started along the lane. Their voices rose in the cold air, clear and full of old words that had been sung long before Ilie's grandfather was born. "Come now," said Father, tying a scarf around his neck. "Ilie, you and Anna will go with the children, stay together, and remember, you do not sing for sweets alone. You sing to bring blessing into each house." The lane was alive now. Shadows moved from gate to gate, lamps flickered, and snow crunched under hurried feet. Children ran, laughed, and formed groups, each with its own leader, each ready to be the first to knock on a door. Ilie and Anna joined their cousins and neighbors, a dozen children in all. Their cheeks were red, their eyes bright, their pockets empty but hopeful. They stopped before the first house. A light shone behind the small window, and smoke curled from the chimney. Ilie lifted his hand and knocked on the wooden gate. "Shall we begin?" whispered Anna. "We already began this morning when we woke up," said Ilie. "But yes, Let us sing." When the gate opened and the man of the house stepped out, wrapped in a thick coat, they started their carol, voices joining into one. "We bring good news from far away, on this bright and holy day." Their song wove itself into the night, slipping under doors and through cracks, rising into the sky. When they finished, the man smiled and clapped his hands. "May your songs reach heaven, children. Come, take some apples and nuts, and a piece of traditional walnut sweetbread too. House after house, gate after gate," the pattern repeated. "Knock, sing, smile, receive." The children's bags grew heavier, but their hearts somehow lighter. At one house, an old woman came out, her back bent, her hands shaking. "Sing for me, little ones," she said. "My ears are not what they used to be, but my heart still understands." They sang more softly then, letting each word fall like a snowflake. When they finished, the old woman wiped her eyes with the corner of her scarf. "I have little to give you," she said, placing a few walnuts in each of their hands, "but God will give you more." As they walked away, Anna looked back. "Ilie, do you think she is lonely?" "Maybe," answered Ilie. "But tonight she had our song. That counts for something." At the far end of the village, beyond the last house, the lane opened into the fields. There, by an old wooden cross half buried in snow, the children stopped for a moment to catch their breath. Above them, the sky was a great dark bowl filled with stars. Some shone strongly, others flickered like timid candles. The world seemed larger and smaller at the same time. One star, brighter than the rest, twinkled just above the line of the forest. Anna pointed. "Look, Eli, that one looks like it is watching us." "Maybe it is," said Eli. "Maybe it watches every winter to make sure we do not forget how to be children." The wind had calmed, and the snow under their feet glowed faintly in the starlight. For a brief moment, none of them spoke. In that silence, they could hear the village breathing, the distant barking of a dog, the creak of a gate, the muffled laughter spilling from a warm house. "Come," said one of the older boys at last. "If we stay here too long, our songs will freeze in our throats." They turned back toward the village, toward the warmth and light, carrying with them not only their bags of apples and sweets, but something less visible and far more precious, the feeling that tonight the world was kinder. When Ilie and Anna finally returned home, tired but happy, the house welcomed them like an old friend. The oil lamp burned softly, the stove hummed with heat, and the smell of traditional walnut sweetbread still lingered in the air. Mother took their coats and scarves, brushing off the snow. "Well, did you sing the roofs off the houses?" "We almost sang the stars out of the sky," said Eli proudly. "We sang for the old lady at the end of the lane," added Anna. "She gave us only a few walnuts, but she almost cried." "Then those walnuts are worth more than a whole basket of sweets," said Father, who sat at the table with a cup of hot tea. "Sit down, children. Warm yourselves. Tomorrow is Christmas. Tonight you have done your part." They gathered at the table, their cheeks still glowing from the cold. Mother cut thick slices of traditional walnut sweetbread and placed them before each of them. Outside, snow continued to fall in slow, lazy flakes, as if the sky itself were tired but content. Eli took a bite of the sweetbread, its taste full of walnut and cocoa and something else he could not name, perhaps the taste of home. He looked at his family, at the small tree dressed in its simple ornaments, at the shadows dancing on the ceiling, and he felt his chest fill with a quiet joy. "Mother," he said softly, Is Christmas always like this? Like what, my dear? Cold outside, warm inside. Hard work in the day, songs at night. If God is merciful, yes, said Mother. Christmas does not need many things. Only a clean heart, a bit of bread to share, and someone to sing with. Father nodded slowly. And snow, added Eli. Snow is the coat that winter lends to the earth, said Father. But even without it, true warmth comes from people, not from weather. They finished their traditional walnut sweetbread in companionable silence. Later, when Eli and Anna lay in their bed on the warm stove, wrapped in blankets, they whispered to each other in the half-dark. Anna, what was your favourite part of today? The old woman, said Anna after a moment. When she listened, it felt like our song mattered. And you? The moment at the cross, answered Eli, when the star looked like it was watching us. For a moment, I thought the whole heaven was listening. Sleep came slowly but sweetly, like snow settling on the village roofs. Outside, the night wrapped its arms around the world, and the stars kept watch. In the morning, when the church bell rang joyfully and the people of the village walked up the hill in their best clothes, the lane was full of footprints, each one a small story of its own. The village was still poor in many ways. The houses were small, the coats were patched, and the hands were rough from work. But in that winter, on that Christmas, the hearts were rich, rich with simple joys, shared songs, warm bread, and the quiet feeling that, for a while at least, the whole world had become a little kinder, and somewhere, above the snow-covered roofs and the line of the dark forest, a bright star shone steadily, as if it remembered every carol, every smile, every little act of goodness from the old village on Christmas Eve. The end.